Hello and welcome to What the Luxe with me, Fred Moore.
And me, Anand Sharma.
Together we lead Matterform, a design consultancy specialising in brand, digital experience and content. And this is a podcast that calls time on tired ideas of luxury.
Alongside industry luminaries and thought leaders, we explore what truly defines category-leading products and services. I'm delighted, Paul, to have you join us for this episode of What the Luxe. Paul is the chief exec of the Luxe Collective and has an illustrious career in hospitality, from right-hand man to Sol Kerzner, through to leading One and Only, and now Luxe. I've had the pleasure of joining the last Luxe Collective Leadership Summit in Mauritius, and I was bowled over by your passion for hospitality, the journey you've been on, but most importantly, the supportive, value-driven culture that you've built. You're just full of joyful stories, a deep care for your team, vision. It's always just struck me how fresh your thinking is. So much of this world is in a state of change, and while it's important to stay on top of these things, the human fundamentals also remain the same, and I feel you're a champion of that ethos. Welcome, Paul. It's great to have you.
Thank you, Anand. Good to be here.
Lovely to have you over in London from Singapore, and delighted that you're moving back here at some point. Paul, can you just tell us a bit about your journey, your background? You know, you've been the general manager to the C-suite of major hotel collections, One and Only, Luxe Collective. You've had a really successful career in hospitality, and I'd just love to hear where it all started.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. You've got to go way back to April 1964. I think that's the Beatles' time. My favorite subject was geography at Urmston Grammar School, just outside Manchester. And the then careers master was also the geography teacher. So he was quite a good supporter of mine. But he pushed me hard. And I remember one day, and this day will always stick in my mind, he was towering over me and he said, "Jones," in his Welsh voice. His name was Mr. Lewis, and he knew that I had Welsh origins. And his academic gown flurried and the chalk dust was flying in the air. And Mr. Lewis then said, "Well, what are you going to do, boy?" I said, "Sir, I want to be a chef." "A chef?" he said. "You should be more ambitious, boy." I said, "Ambitious, sir? What do you mean?" I said, "Well," he said, "Jones, you should become a hotel manager." "Oh, sir, I didn't think about that." He said, "Well, you better bloody well think about it." I said, "Okay, sir, I will." I was only 15 years old. So I started rummaging through different boxes in his careers master office, and I was looking for hotel management courses. And there were about, at that time in England, about 10 or 11 hotel schools, or colleges as they were. And the one nearest to where I was Blackpool. And I was looking for a course that I could start right away because I wanted to get out of school. I really didn't want to take A-levels. I had no interest in that. I wanted to get on the road to becoming a hotel manager. Now, Mr. Lewis had given me some direction. So I rummaged through the boxes, found Blackpool, filed College of Technology. They called it Courtfield at the time. And I found a course that I could start. It was called a General Catering Diploma. Had a touch of chef in it as well through the catering. But they told me that this was a pathway to hotel management. If I was good enough to pass that, then I could take a third year final membership of the Hotel and Catering Institute, which is exactly what I did. Now, Blackpool was very prescient of my later specialization in the industry because, of course, Blackpool is the resort of the UK. I was reading about it in the FT at the weekend, and I thought it was quite an interesting story. And it reminded me of those days of the 60s, of 3 years spent in Blackpool and learning all about the different, you had the Irish and the Scottish, and then you had the Yorkshire mill workers and all the different people that used to come to Blackpool on holiday. And of course, in those days, they used to spend 5 or 6 nights in Blackpool. These days, you're lucky if they spend 1 or 2 nights. And of course, the Blackpool landladies are very famous, and the article actually mentioned them. And we stayed in digs with the Blackpool landlady. But I was very fortunate to go to that school because it had some very talented teachers. I remember Johnny White, a very tough man, very rigorous, who taught us service. And we all dressed in morning suits, black coat, striped trousers, stiff collar, all of that. When we were waiting on, we would wear tails and wing collars, and we used to have great fun. And then in the kitchen, I remember the pastry teacher, Mr. Hoyle. We had so many, Mrs. Skelton, who was our culinary teacher. And then one teacher, I'll never forget it. He modeled himself. His name was Harry Hudson. He modeled himself on Escoffier. He used to come with a berry on his head, and he had this little moustache. I mean, he was British, but he was like, French, and his mannerism. And he'd come to school. Of course, we found out the easiest book to learn was called Cesarani and Kinton, Practical Cookery. But if he saw that book in class, he would throw it out. You're not bringing that book in class. There's only 2 books you can bring. One, Escoffier. Ooh, Escoffier. Okay, that's a very serious book, very thick. And the other one was Saulnier. What is Saulnier, sir? Oh, Le Répertoire de la Cuisine. Oh, okay. All right. So those were the 2 books, all of which is a long-winded way of saying I had a very rigorous and thorough traditional training in our industry. And it was extremely disciplined. And I just imbibed all of that and took it in. And when I came out, I was quite young. I was not even 19. And I passed, I was 18, and then I took a diploma in marketing. And then my father announced to us all, oh, he's being transferred to South Africa. My mother had passed 3 years earlier. And so he said, do we want to come to South Africa? So I said, yes, we'll come to South Africa. And that was my good fortune, going to South Africa, because it was opening up to the world of hospitality. A number of hotels were opening. And I was lucky to get a job very quickly in a beautiful hotel, the Balalaika, where the general manager was a gentleman called David Hayden. And David went on to become the CEO of Shangri-La Hotels. A big job. But so from Balalaika, 40 rooms, thatch, roof, hotel in the northern suburbs of Johannesburg. And we never worked with each other again. We were always trying to get together again, but I went in a different direction. I joined Sol Kerzner in 1972 in Durban, which is where he started. His parents had a hotel called the Menorah Hotel, and he built a hotel called the Beverly Hills. And I didn't start there. I started another property called the Edward. The Edward Hotel was very, as the name implies, very traditional hotel. And I loved that. I went from there to Kimberley. I opened the Kimberley Hotel, where the diamond mines are. And then from there I went back to Durban. I did a stint in Sol's Beverly Hills Hotel. I remember I was quite still a traditional hotelier in those days. And here I was turning up at this resort with a pool deck. Sol was one of the early hoteliers who created pool decks and, I had a fun hotel. So I turned up in my morning suit. And the staff were looking at me very strangely. And then I remember Gwen Rist, the secretary, pulled me to one side and said, Paul, Mr. Kersner, he doesn't wear those type of clothes. He's much more casual, sneakers and, polo shirt and chinos. This is back 1974. So that's what I did. And then I moved to Joburg, which is more of a city hotel in the Landros. Very funny. Saul used to get ideas from around the world. And in that hotel, the Landros, we had Annabelle's, which he modeled on Annabelle's nightclub here. And then he had Barney Bonato's, which was a rib room, like at the Carlton Tower, which he imitated. And then we had a Bali High, which is a Polynesian restaurant. So all of these ideas permeated my youthful experiences. And then one day I was called up by the GM at the time, a guy called Harry Murray, who a very good man. And Harry called me, he said, the boss wants to see you. Oh my God, what does he want? Oh, you wait and see. Okay, all right. So I went up, and then there was Saul. Hey, Paulie, he used to call me Paulie. I don't know why, but anyway, Paulie, sit down. Okay. Yeah, Paulie, I want you to go to Mauritius. I said, sir, where's Mauritius? I had no clue. I mean, I'm talking now 1975, August, Mauritius. And then he said, well, you'll find out soon enough. It's in the Indian Ocean. I said, well, why me? And he said, well, you're single and you're a food and beverage expert, supposedly. Okay, all right, I'll go. And we're opening, and you're supposed to be good at opening hotels. All right. So off I went, and then I started. And of course, it was very frustrating because I found that in Mauritius, people were supposed to speak English, but they didn't. They spoke French and Creole. Back in Urmston Grammar School, my worst subject was French, and I literally hated it because of the teacher. The teacher annoyed me no end, and we were sharing stories about your school. And now I was faced with the reality of either I learn or I'm not going to be able to communicate. And if you can't communicate with people that are working with you, the team members, then forget it. You're never gonna win. So I got a teacher who was with the American Peace Corps, and he said, Paul, he said, you better learn how to sing. I said, okay, sing in French. I said, I can't even speak French. He said, yeah, but if you sing in French, you'll learn the words, and then you'll be able to bring them out and with some expressions. I learned, and I even sang for the guests in French eventually. So it was very, very amusing time way back when, and I learned of a fashion, and I obviously picked up Creole, and I started to appreciate the Mauritian people, their warmth, their authenticity, their genuine feelings toward people that came, I believe, from their origins. The majority of people in Mauritius are from India origin. So they are very gentle, very true to their traditions. They still have all their practices, and that makes them very calm and very welcoming. And so you've got this hot, and we've got other people that came from other parts. Before the indentured Indian laborers came, you had the slaves coming more from Africa. So you've got all of that polyglot of cultures and colors and different ethnic backgrounds, which make up Mauritius' kaleidoscope of people. But I found it really rich in its depth and breadth of feeling. I literally poured my heart and soul into, and I wasn't married at the time, I had my daughter who was born in South Africa, but I lived that hotel. Yeah. It was just a mission for me and a passion, and nobody could stop me on making that hotel an icon in the hospitality world, and getting to know all the guests, and they just loved it. So yeah, I stayed there, and then we added more hotels. I think I did a bit of a program. Sol gave me some award for GM of the year, and he said, we'll send you on a trip around the world. I said, I don't want to go on a trip around the world. He said, what do you want to do? I said, I've read a lot about Harvard Business School. I want to learn about business at the best school in the world. He said, oh, you really want to go there? I said, yeah. So he said, okay. So I went there for 4 months, and people describe it as trying to take a drink out of a fire hydrant. You do 3 case studies a day. Every day you're in a can of 12 people, and you discuss the cases. And then what the professors do is they cold call you. So you better know what you better do the work. And I was, I think, the youngest in the program. I was quite young for that. But there were people from all over the world, 120 in our cohort, some great professors. We had a professor of marketing, Ted Levitt. He was quite extraordinary. He used to jump on the desk and whirl his hands around, and you gotta look at the world from helicopter vision. So many different professors, so much learning. I remember I did 6 case studies on Singapore. So I found Lee Kuan Yew, and everything he did was just so extraordinary. I remember when he came to Mauritius, I was so excited. I took him through the hotel, took him over to Ilo Surf. I was responsible for Tusrock at the time. And he asked me so many questions. How does the sewage work? How do you get water here? How do you do this? How do biodiversity? How do you do this? He just non-stop. So such a great lesson, meeting a wise gentleman and leader. And now living in Singapore, I see the fruits of his wisdom have all come to pass, and it's just quite extraordinary. So yeah, we grew the group, more hotels. And then we spread, and Sol spread, and with it I got more promotions, and I was asked to take on the luxury side of the group as it was expanding in Dubai with the Royal Mirage, and Sol asked me to move to London, which was quite a big jump for me. And around that time, we were working on trying to create a brand for these luxury hotels. And Sol's eldest son, Butch, he was taking over the business, and he and I worked together on rebranding what was then known as Sun International. And Sol would always say, well, what's wrong with it? And we said, well, it's not really a brand, Sol, not really. Anyway, of course, it wasn't difficult to figure out what to call the company. And of course, we called it Kerzner, and that was a no-brainer. But what to call the luxury hotels, that was more difficult. And then eventually we came up with One and Only. After going through another iteration with the agency, which we then had second thoughts about, after having told all the owners that that's what it was going to be. So it was just an incredible journey. And Sol Kerzner, I'm ever grateful that we spent so much time together, because I learned so many things. He was an accountant. He was a wizard at marketing. And then later he got so involved with development, and he would insist that I attended every design meeting, right from concept design stage. I'm ever grateful for that because I learned so many things.
So you worked with Kelly Hoppen
Yes.
on Grand Bay. Is it hard to know what's right until it's done? And what do you do when it's done if it doesn't feel right?
It is very difficult. And I'm not an architect and I'm not an interior designer. I think I have a huge amount of creativity inside of me that I want to bring out to the process, particularly at concept design stage. I think you start with the end in mind, and then you have to force yourself to visualize that end and the space and the volume and the adjacencies and the view corridors, and what are you going to be looking at and at what level. And all of that I got from Sol. I am not ashamed to say I got it all from listening to him, because he would go through that process with all of them, with every single one of them, every single time, painfully. And it was painful. And of course, he would pepper it with 4-letter words, and he would have worry beads. I think his right and left-hand men used to carry sacks of worry beads because they used to wind up. Sometimes he'd throw them at people,
Obviously, the luxury part of Kerzner, one and only. You built the one and only brand. Right. You've obviously been on many brand development journeys. That one perhaps was one of the more formative ones. Yeah. You've also sat with many architects and you've sat with many interior designers. Mm-hmm. We develop brands, and sometimes I sit there going through a brand process, and this is true of my trip to NEOM yesterday, and then you're thinking, God, what must the architectural process be like if we have to go through this journey to define the brand and how it's expressed and reach some quite simple conclusions around where a business's white space is, who its customer is, and how it's expressed in a way that's evocative. What must the architectural journey be like? What must the interior journey be like? There's a lot on your plate, managing so many creative processes that all need to interface with each other. But what's a brand process like versus an architectural process when you're building this massive physical thing where there's so much room for error?
Well, the architectural, the ID, that's physical. And that is, once it's built, it's built. And once it's made and done. And it's very tangible. Our business and what are we actually branding is intangible. And it's how do you brand the intangible? So we're not making a Hermes Kelly bag, which is a very physical expression of that brand. And obviously it's exquisite, it's bespoke, and it's quality all the way through, from the leather to the stitching to the different metals, etc. Our business is, and that's where the branding becomes more difficult. First of all, it's 24/7, so we're branding a service, the intertwining of the service with the physical, and the delivery of the whole is by people, and people are human. So therefore, that's the humanistic expression of the whole. When people arrive or they buy the branded hospitality experience, shall we call it that, or the branded hospitality product, if you want to call it that, they're buying into a hotel initially, I guess. When they arrive, the hotel is a given. It should be, especially in the luxury space, it must be amazing in every respect. So what is the difference? It's the people. That, and how do you tangibilize the intangible? The intangible is the people. What do they say? What do they do? What do they look like? How do they express it? How do they deliver everything that they have to deliver 24/7? And in such a way that all the potential irritations of people's life, which is so orderly in their home, because everything is structured, everything is the way I want it. My toothbrush is here, my towel is here, my bed is like this, all those things you can think of, how you live and how your wife prepares your boiled eggs in the morning, your toast and this and that. So the whole journey of your day for 24 hours now is being taken over by a third party, branded. Yeah. Okay. So how do you make all those potential irritants go away? I say luxury is being thoughtful. So we as the provider, in providing that 24-hour experience for 7 days or 14 nights or however long you're going to stay with us, how thoughtful are we in the way we express everything that we are providing for you, such that we're anticipating your every need, your every desire, your every wish at the most basic levels, because that is essential. Because if we don't meet that level, then we're in trouble. You know, I think the greatest thing in luxury is people to trust the brand. And I know you talk about that a lot when you're talking about branding. You have to create that trust. And people now, they really want to feel that what they've bought, they can trust it to the nth degree, and that nothing will go wrong, because they haven't. That's not what they paid for. That's not what they've signed up for.
The whole paradigm of value is based on the smallest detail.
Correct. It's all about the detail and the quality of those details. You know, I know you want to ask me, are there any hotel brands that I admire? And frankly, there aren't any hotel brands that I admire. There are people that I admire in the hospitality world, some of whom have created brands. I mean, if I think of Alan Ducasse, who's in the culinary field, he is his brand, and what he's done is extraordinary. Somebody a little different, like a Jeremy King, also as a restaurateur, is extraordinary. I admire what he does, because he's passionate and he does it to the nth degree. That is, to me, luxury. But you can't say a Jeremy King brand, but he creates these things. So I admire people in the hotel world. Obviously, Sol was a luminary, and his everything he's done, outlives him. I mean, it's there. It's his legacy. I mean, you look at an image of Dubai, you will see Atlantis. Yeah. That's their poster child for Dubai. That was 1,000% Sol Kerzner. That's it. That was his vision through and through. A guy like Schrager, I think he delivers a lot to the hospitality world. There are general managers, one that I worked with, Edward Steiner. Unfortunately, he died, but he ran Palmia in Cabo San Luca. He was extraordinary. Attention to detail, unbelievable. He would make covers for the maid's carts. You would never know it's a maid cart or a vacuum cleaner. He would have a uniform for the vacuum cleaner. Yes. Or a broom. You wouldn't know it's a broom. I mean, he would cover things up and dress it up. Everything was just so exquisite.
You talked to us about being a general manager, because I'm really interested by the life of a general manager.
You're a role model. You really are. You have to walk the talk. And you better not be sitting in your office. You've got to be out there talking to the guests, talking to the team members, encouraging them, and walking the talk. So, whatever you want your people to do, you better be doing it yourself. And I'm always thankful that, when I was at hotel school in Blackpool, every weekend, every holiday, I was working. I was working in kitchen, I was waiting, I was in the bar. I remember one of the first overseas job was in Austria, in Eagles by Innsbruck, and that was an incredible experience. It was in 1966, the year England won the World Cup. I had a bet with the chef, and I won, actually. But he got cross with me, and he threw a kitchen fork. It stuck in the back of my leg. Anyway, I have all these stories. And the kitchen was in the basement. We had to run up and down the stairs with the food. And all the guests, who many of them came from America, they used to think I was Austrian because of my blonde hair at the time. And they said, "Oh, you speak such good English." I am. Thank you. And I got more tips. So it was very funny. But the experience of doing the jobs helped me appreciate people later on who I had to lead in those various jobs, which can be very thankless, but you can make them not thankless. You can enrich them.
Are there some directions you think we're heading in that are bad ones?
Well, the proliferation of brands, for sure. The concentration of the industry into the big six, if you want, and the necessity for them once they built out so many different edifications of their company in the myriad of brands that they've created, spawns more and more brands. And what do they all mean at the end of the day? And then each one has its own requirement of building out the pipeline in order to add value on a multiple basis. And that is the problem, because there is no Hermes of the hospitality world. I'm ashamed about that. Why have we not been able to create a Maison Hermes of the hospitality world? If you ask me which is my most admired luxury brand, it would be Hermes, for many, many reasons. Their challenge is the opposite. So they start with a product that's exquisite, of course. Then they have to add experiences, and they overlay the experiences to the product to make customers believe that they bought more than a handbag or a briefcase or a saddle or a pair of shoes or whatever it is, or a jacket or something. So they layer on, and that, of course, adds to the element of marketing. But I tend to shy away, and I think many customers are similar, from too much marketing. And there's always a danger of that. But you never know where a brand is in its life cycle, because I watch a brand like Hermes. I watch them. I see that they go through differences, and I see they're targeting more the younger. Somebody, I can imagine them saying, "Oh, our customers that always bought the Kelly and the Birkin and that bag, that really bought into the whole. That they're old and they're going. We have the same problem with our repeat guests. And how do we attract the younger
without alienating the existing?
There you go. And that becomes a challenge, And so when you look at their brand and then you look at their design, and then they hire designers, and LVMH are the same for their different brands. So, but of course they have multiple brands in the luxury space. Hermes is just the one. So they have a different challenge.
Okay, Paul, so we always ask our guests the same 4 questions.
Yeah.
The first is, what irritates you about our industry?
I think a lot of people in our business are not real. They can be quite fake and pretending. I don't like that. And they spend more time polishing their image on LinkedIn than actually doing what they should be doing. And they are not loyal. Yeah. I've worked for 2 companies in 50 years. My father worked for one, so I guess it's in my genes. And why are you so worried about your next job? Why not worry about your current job and do that to the best of your ability? Because that will take care not just of your next job, it'll take care of your life, because you'll be so good at doing what you're doing that people will want you. If you are so minded to have to want to gravitate to another company or do your own thing or whatever it is, but do what you're doing absolutely to the best of what you can do it. I don't see that much. People are in a hurry. They're obsessed with position, title, status, this, that, and the other. I don't know what it is. I just don't. I don't understand. I think it gets in the way of passion, and that worries me.
That's my favourite answer to the question in all of our episodes, actually. I couldn't agree with you more. You know, it's so sad, the rate of job churn and the wonderful aspects that a job can bring you, you know, community, long-term purpose, really building something rather than just building your CV. Perhaps easier to say in a leadership position, but nonetheless. What concerns you most about the world we're leaving, the next generation?
I think values. I think values are being eroded, what we're handing down to our children, what our children are hearing, listening to on TV, if you allow them to watch TV, or social media, if you allow them. But how can they not be exposed to it? Because they do. I mean, my two boys, you know, from very young, 2 years, you know, they're able to manipulate and press the right button and actually know more than I do. But it's the content that scares me. And then when you see, I mean, I've been fortunate, I think, to have been born after World War II. And up until more recently, we didn't have that much real war. But this Ukraine war is just horrible. This Gaza is terrible. And it's just like we can never learn our lesson. And that's, by the way, one thing I hope our guests take away from our hotels is what humanity can be really like. Because that's what we ask our people to deliver in bucket loads, is humanity at its best. And it's not just courtesy, but it's just, basic human nature. And you know, where has all of that gone in the world? And how can we be rewarding the wrong behaviors with anything? So I worry about that. I think there's some hope. I think the younger people, I don't believe they like a lot of what's going on in the world. And I think if it was down to the younger folks, they would put an end to it all. So it's the responsibility is on the leadership. So it's politicians, basically.
Yeah. The next question is sort of, perhaps in some ways, a funny one. If you had to give up your job tomorrow, what would you do?
My intention is actually to keep going. I have no intention to give up. Yeah, I mean, I think that obviously I've been around a while, and you know, I'm one of those who believes age is a number, and you're as old as you feel, and as old as you're able to expand positive energy and outcomes for people. And I think that it's strange, actually, because clearly the older you get, the wiser you become, and the richer in experience, and the more you have to offer. So yes, I feel I have a lot to offer, and I want to continue offering that experience. I'm never going to sit or play golf or or only do photography. I'll still do photography.
Well, I'm very envious of your career so far in hospitality. And then the last question, What is the most exciting thing for you in the next 5 years? Just generally, what gets you excited?
Well, it's as I just described. I think coming back to the UK is going to be very exciting. Watching the boys go to their new schools. I think together with my wife, adapting to the UK and the weather conditions, and then working on different ideas that I have trotting around in my head.
Paul, thank you so much. It's just fascinating as ever.
Thank you, Anna, and thanks for all you've done for Luxe. It's been a great partnership so far. Thank you.
It's been a joy.
Thanks so much for listening. This has been What the Luxe. You can find us on socials at Matter of Form and drop us any questions or comments on Twitter using the hashtag #WhatTheLuxe. And if you're a luxury brand looking for strategy or design that goes beyond the banal, get in touch via hello@matterofform.com and chat to one of our consultants. And so, until next time.